Have you ever felt like you're stuck in life? In a job you hate, not living what you truly want? Well, that's because you believe in the myth of failure, and you're stuck because your fear of failure is stronger than your desire for success, causing you to pick guaranteed mediocrity over a genuine chance at greatness. I don't think any game has painted that myth as accurately as Baldur's Gate 3. As a former professional poker player, I know how intimidated failure can be, but I also know that failing is just a myth and it's actually something good. And with the help of Shadowheart, I'll share you why it's a myth, how failure can help you, and why it was the thing that changed my life forever. You need to understand why you're afraid of failing. When I played Baldur's Gate 3, I remember the first time I met Shadowheart, the exotically beautiful and mysterious half-elf that can't land a single spell. Despite that, I decided to keep her in my party. After all, having a cleric that can heal you is a big deal for any RPG. But as we started to progress, she took every opportunity she had to make it clear she had a clear goal and would not let anyone interfere with it. And even though I had no idea what it was, I respected it. But I started to notice that even though she looked really determined, she had an intrinsic fear in her eyes. And that wasn't the fear of wolves, it was actually fear of failing. But why? Her personality doesn't really align with the type of person who we think of when we talk about fear of failure. I mean, she fails at almost every spell, she should be used to it, right? Okay, jokes aside, Shadowheart is a follower of the Lady of Loss, Shar, and even though she's determined to carry on with Shar's mission at all costs, that wasn't always the case. Shadowheart, or Genevieve, was brought to a Sharon temple by Mother Superior Viconia Davir, and she was chosen by Shar herself, who wanted to train young Genevieve to become a champion of the Dark Lady. She went through a brutal training, being lied to about her parents, and even being forced to repeatedly use the Mirror of Loss, which slowly erased her memories, turning Genevieve into Shadowheart. Now, as a powerful warrior, Shadowheart was given the suicidal mission of going after a mysterious artifact that was being held by the Githyanki's. This artifact would help the Sharons stop the ever-growing influence and threat of the Absolute Code. Shadowheart and her party went to the mission and successfully took the artifact from the Githyanki's, but they paid a heavy price. Shadowheart was the only survivor of the mission. After that, she was caught by the Mind Flayers, and what happens after is the very story that we play in Baldur's Gate 3 and is impacted by our own actions. I kept her in my party, and as you progress in the game, she starts to be more open to you, sharing you a bit of what's left from her memory, and naturally, we start to see and understand that Shadowheart's fear of failing comes from what-if scenarios. She literally has no memories of her past. She was indoctrinated by the Sharon cultists, so everything she knows is the Church of Night and the Sharons. So she starts creating what-if scenarios. What if I can't get the artifact to Baldur's Gate? What if Shar sends a challenge so hard I can't beat it? What if Shar deems me unworthy? What if the Church of the Night turns their back to me? Those what-if scenarios mean losing everything she knows, the connections, the place she was raised, everything, even if those things are not real or genuine. Remember, she was indoctrinated to believe those things matter. She was forced to believe those what-if scenarios were real. For some reason, I know that feeling, the fear of failing, the fear of what if, and this is where her story becomes personal for me. I used to play poker professionally, and my mom wasn't really fond of poker. She had some unhealed trauma from her parents which abused gambling, and poker in her eyes wasn't different from gambling. Even though I was quite successful in my early career as a poker player, my mom's immense pressure ended up creating the same crippling doubts in my head. I started to think, what if my mom is right? What if I'm not good enough? Even though I had a contract signed with a professional team, I was surrounded by professional coaches and had enough data to prove that wasn't real. I still crumbled to that fear. And my natural response was to prove those what-if scenarios wrong. But that's the problem. Shadowheart tried to do the same. She fought those what-if scenarios, but that's just not possible on her own. That's because those what-if scenarios come from influence rather than reality. She feared those scenarios because she is in the Church of the Night, because of the Sharons, and especially because of Shar. That's Shadowheart's mistake. and also mine. Instead of caring about the data and my coach's instructions, I started to care about proving my mom she was wrong through the what if scenarios I unconsciously created, which would never happen because they're not real. That ended up on me settling on mediocrity, trying to prove those what if scenarios wrong instead of ignoring it and keeping studying to achieve higher levels and eventually more rewards. I settled for guaranteed mediocrity instead of risking greatness. And just like my mistake was focusing on the what if scenarios instead of real life, Shadowheart's mistake was focusing on Sharon's expectations instead of her own heart. The lesson from both my poker table and Shadowheart is the same. The real enemy isn't failure, it's the what if scenarios that are whispered in our ears. The what if is the reason why me, Shadowheart, and you are afraid of failing. In the end, our fear of failure is often an echo of an outside voice. And that's the voice of society that has been programmed into you. It's the voice that turns a failed exam in high school into a what-if scenario about your entire future. But here's the truth that both my story and Shadowheart's story prove. That voice is not real. It's just a story someone else told you. But understanding your fear of failure isn't enough if you don't understand what's next. You need to understand what failure truly is if you want to overcome the fear. And there's no better example than when Shadowheart finds the Night Song. Shadowheart is a devout follower of Shar, and her entire life has been a brutal training for one single mission, to become a Dark Justicer and Shar's ultimate champion. During Act 2, Shar gives Shadowheart a chance to fulfill the mission, but before, Shadowheart needs to go through the Gauntlet of Shar, a series of challenges that only those worthy in the eyes of Shar are able to complete. After completing the challenge, Shadowheart is given the mission by Shar. If Shadowheart wants to become a Dark Justicer, she needs to destroy the ancient relic, and as Shadowheart enters the Shadowfell, which is a shadow plane claimed by Shar, she finally stands before the Night Song. But the relic isn't a relic, it's Dame Aileen, the daughter of the goddess Elune and twin sister and sworn enemy of Shar. Facing Dame Aileen, Shadowheart believes her whole life and identity is on the line. She faces a choice: kill the Night Song and fulfill her life's mission, or spare Dame Aileen and become a failure in the eyes of her goddess and community. I know this exact feeling. When I was faced with the opportunity to leave professional poker, I faced the same impossible dilemma: stick with the dream I had fought for years, or start over and accept the feeling of being a failure. The fear of the unknown, the I'm a failure for giving up guilt, those were things I was thinking during that time of my life, and I can clearly see that in Shadowheart's eye during the Night Song encounter. The best part is, Baldur's Gate doesn't really let you decide 100%. I mean, it does, but it doesn't tell you. Your whole journey with Shadowheart will define how eager to listen to you she is during the Night Song encounter, meaning that depending on your previous choice, she may completely ignore you. But if Shadowheart lets Dame Aileen leave, what happens next is the most accurate depiction of what failure really is. She's obviously a bit scared. After all, she's now deep in the unknown. She doesn't feel Shar's presence anymore, and she believes she's a failure. After all, everything she fought for meant nothing now. That's how I felt after quitting poker. All the challenges, all the constant arguing with my mom, all for nothing. In the end, she was right. No, absolutely not. Those bad feelings are normal and somewhat expected because you're shifting your perspective. Slowly, Shadowheart starts to see the whole world she was missing, and even though she failed Shar, it doesn't mean she's a failure. We often see failure as the end of the road, when in fact it could be a start of a new one or even a shortcut. Quitting poker allowed me to get into content creation as a career, a hobby I had for more than 15 years. It gave me financial freedom, geographical freedom since I wasn't locked by a country or a state law about poker, and it allowed me to see life through a whole different lens. But it was also an essential part of my journey. I learned so much in terms of mindset and skills that were translated to my content creation career as a freelancer, and in my opinion are the reasons why I succeed. That's also true for Shadowheart. Her path before allowed her to meet you, the player, who shows her that there's more to life than the Church of the Night. It's a slow and somewhat tricky process to rewire your brain from seeing that failure as a good thing, but once you do that, life becomes easier. So, what can you truly learn from these stories? What's the hidden secret to see failure for what it truly is? The hidden secret is that things fail and you have to stop taking it personally. Even though things don't work out the way you expected, you can learn from it. Did you try to build your own business and it didn't work out? Then your business failed, not you. Go there, study what went wrong, and learn from that failed business so your next one can thrive. You need to separate your creations from yourself. Learn from them, but do not turn their outcomes into identity, because you're not. I'm Vinny. Complex being, not just a former poker player. Shadowheart is more than just a follower of Shar, and you are much more than the things you do. Alright, now you know that failure is not your identity. But that raises an even bigger question. How do we take the very thing we're afraid of and turn it into a fuel for success? For that answer, we turn back to Shadowheart. Right after her whole world has fallen apart, after letting the Night Song live, Shadowheart is completely lost. Her connection to Shar is gone, her life's mission is a failure, her identity is shattered. She constantly asks herself, what do I do now? Where do I go? And after leaving poker, I felt the exact same way. My entire identity was Vinny, the poker player. Without it, what was left? How would I impress other people? In the world of RPGs, there's a powerful concept and mechanic for this moment. It's a respec. A respec is when you take all the hard-earned experience points from your old character build and reallocate them to create something new. You don't lose your levels, you just change your class. That's what Shadowheart does. She even changes her hair, a visual sign that she's reallocating her skill points from Shard to Saloon. The combat skills, the resilience, the experience she gained, it's all still there, just used for a new self-direct purpose. My journey was the same. Quitting poker wasn't deleting my character, it was a respect. I took the skill points I had earned in mindset, risk analysis, and emotional control when playing poker and reallocated them to my new content creator class. The skills were transferable and made me a unique content marketer, which has been working for companies for 5 years with a lot of success. That's the proof that a respect can be the most powerful move you ever make. Shadowheart is the personification of failure. I mean, she fails every attack, she even failed her goddess, but despite that, she's the most popular companion in Baldur's Gate 3. Her journey of failure and reinvention is what makes her such a relatable character. How can a failure, a respec, actually be the secret to become more successful than you ever imagined? It comes down to one final, simple truth. Let's go to the real world. In the history of NBA, LeBron James is the all-time leading scorer. He has made more points than any other player. But guess what? He also holds the record for having missed the most shots in NBA history. The lesson here is not that failure is part of the process. This is true, but the secret is that the masters of the game aren't the ones who never miss, they are the ones who have taken the most shots. Your fear of failure isn't keeping you safe, it's keeping you on the bench. It's time to get into the game of life and start taking your shots. And now, with this mindset, you know that failure is a myth, at least the way society portrays it. You know you have to embrace it if you want to improve and succeed. But there's one final enemy that can turn even a productive failure into a catastrophe: tilt. So if you want to learn how to face failure without letting it tilt you off the planet, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification, because next week, Kratos is going to teach us how to become untiltable.
Finally.